Today I'm going to build out a real weekly report system live using nothing but Claude Code. I don't want the term Claude Code scaring people away just because it says code in it. Claude has actually created one of the lowest barrier to entry AI systems for real workflow development. And if you want to get ahead with AI, you at least need to learn the basics of this, and that's what we're going to go do in this video. In the last video I made, I gave you 3 skills: assist, optimize, and transform. All 3 are supposed to help you identify which workflows in your tech stack can be automated, optimize those automatable workflows, and transform the actual process into an AI-ready system that you can repeat over and over again, cutting your time on these processes by up to 50% or even more. Today's video isn't about running the 3 skills again. It's actually about what comes after them. So once you've got the automatable workflow, those skills identified, this is the direct build. I'm going to show you exactly how to turn that into a working system using Claude Code. In this particular example, we're going to assume that once you've run the 3 skills, the recommendation was to build the weekly AI report, one that references Excel data, meeting transcripts, and any other notes that you've taken through the day or in a week. It brings everything together into one robust report that you can send to your high-level management. It sets up a task management system for yourself so you know exactly where to pick up the following week. First, for anyone who's never opened Claude Code, we'll do a 2-minute setup. Then we'll look at the data that's already sitting in this project. We'll go straight into building the real system, start to finish. So we're just going to jump straight into it and start off by downloading Visual Studio Code. If you ever have had a developer background, then I'm sure you're very familiar with this, but you're just going to go ahead and download for Mac or Windows, whichever one you need. Essentially, this is just going to be the hosting platform for Claude Code. You can actually see that when you open up Claude, I'm sure if you're familiar with the interface at all, that Claude Code is an option in the actual Claude interface. But we're going to go ahead and do it with VS Code just because you can see the sessions, but you can't really see the individual project files. So VS Code looks a little bit cleaner. So when you first open it, you're going to see a fresh window here. You're likely going to need to, or you're going to have a login option up here. I would recommend making a GitHub just because for future projects it might be useful. And then when you log in, you're going to want to go to this extensions tab and you're going to search Claude and you're going to see Claude Code for VS Code, 22 million downloads. This is definitely the one. You're going to go ahead and install it. Of course, I already have it installed, so I'm not going to do it myself. Sometimes there might be an issue of not being able to see the Claude logo on your left banner here or up here. Likely, you're just going to have to go back into this Claude Code window, and there should be a little button here that says show in bar or whatever that is. So once you do that, then you'll be able to see it here. And this little left banner here essentially is the same exact thing as a regular window that you would have in Claude normally. Now, of course, when you first open it up, you're not going to have this screen. You're going to have to log into your enterprise account. So make sure that you log in with your enterprise account. That's really important. Unless your company says otherwise that you can use your personal account, you should always log in with your enterprise account. So once you're logged in with your enterprise account, you're going to see this is one of the first windows and first sessions that you're going to start off with. You can start a new session either by clicking down here and clicking new session, or my preference, just clicking this button up here. You're going to see, you can click it a million times, you're going to get a bunch of different sessions. So you can run many instances of Claude at once. We're going to go ahead and switch up to this file viewer up here, and you're going to see this open folder button. The open folder, this is really where your project organization starts. You're going to need to be able to open up a new project, whatever it is, whether it's a new workflow you want to do, a new system you want to develop. You should always just open it up and create a new fresh project for a new workflow that you're going to start. I like to keep it individualistic from workflows, and then if it makes sense, combine several different workflows into one project later down the road. So I already created a folder that is on my desktop. I'm going to calling it AI Weekly Update Project. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And of course, there's nothing in here yet. It's a fresh project. So we are all going to start from the same boat. The next important thing that you're going to need to include in this project is 2 different Claude MD files. Now, Claude has some great information on what a Claude MD file is. You can actually search it up here. And if you really want to go into the details of what a Claude MD file is, you can go ahead and read this. I would actually recommend it just so that you can understand a little bit more. But long story short, Claude MD file is really your basic level set instructions that your Claude session will read every time you open a new session. So you can always imagine that whenever you have an issue with opening a Claude instance or whatever it is, you're always going to have to give it the same context over and over again. Let's say you have project files that you want to work on, or that you need in that instance, or you need to give it the same prompt over and over again. That is just not the most convenient way of doing it, and honestly not the most context efficient way of doing it. And so what a ClaudMD file does is essentially global instructions that every time you load a session, it's going to read this file. A really good resource for actually capturing this file is Nate Herc. He's one of the main AI YouTube guys right now. I actually got this from his school community. Highly recommend checking that out. He has a lot of great resources on there. But essentially, we're going to start off by using this ClaudMD file here. So we're going to start off with this ClaudMD file, and if I just drag it into this project, you're going to see here these agent instructions. Essentially, this is basically the instructions that you're always going to be going through for every project. So you'll see it's essentially what architecture, workflow, agents, and tools. This is really kind of just breaking it down. You don't need to go super in-depth on this, but if you want, I'd highly recommend reading this. This main Claude file is going to sit in our root Claude folder. So there's two Claude folders that you're going to want, or two ClaudMD files that you're going to want to create. There is the root folder, which is essentially the global folder that sits on top of every single Claude instance, regardless of what project you're working on. And then there's going to be specific project level ClaudMD files. We're not going to create that second one just yet because we actually need to develop this project and create this project. So what I'm going to do is what I would actually do in order to be able to put this file into its root folder is prompt Claude ask it to do it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it, find me the root folder for where my Claude.md file should exist for all of my Claude instances. So you can see once it thought about it, this is really those two different instances that I was talking about. The global applies to every project. It's usually going to sit in your users folder there, or the project specific ones, which in this case, this is the project root, and this is where a new ClaudMD file would sit. So what I would do is actually ask the specific instance to load this ClaudMD file in as your as your global root. So weird thing about VS Code, you can't really drag things in unless you're dragging into the Explorer, but in this case we want it in the specific instance. So we're going to go ahead and copy this and then just paste it directly into this instance. You'll see it's here. And then you would want to ask it to load this ClaudMD file as the global root ClaudMD file for all my projects. Now, I'm not going to do that because I already have my global ClaudMD file. It's essentially the same thing. I've just tweaked it a tiny bit for my own preferences. But you can go ahead and do that, and Claude will automatically get that done for you. So once you have that in, we're going to start a new Claude instance. So you can, once again, go ahead and click up here, start a brand new Claude instance. And this is really where we're going to start the project. This initial prompt is going to be essentially the starting level of what we're trying to accomplish. What I would recommend is to use some sort of speech-to-text tool like Whisper. I love Whisper. I use it all the time. I probably type around 20% of the time these days just because I use AI and Whisper does it for me. One main thing is that, LLMs are conversational AIs. And so the closer you can get to conversation, the better they're going to work. This is not sponsored and I don't get any money from them. So this is just genuinely my opinion. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Here's what I want to build. Every Friday, I want to look back at everything that happened during the week between my meetings, my tasks, and my project updates. And I want to be able to turn this into a status report for my manager and a checklist of what I need to pick up on as soon as I open my laptop on Monday. Right now I do this by hand every single time, and I want to build a system that does it for me automatically on a scheduled output. I have a data folder in this project with a week's worth of meeting transcripts, notes, and other project docs. I'd like to be able to create a system where every week it will compile the information for me in a clean manner and then be able to give me a summary of that week. Ultimately, the goal that we want to be able to get out is create 2 outputs. It's 1 clean report that I can send to leadership, and then 1 task management list for myself for the following week. So you can see that it took down my speech. The nice thing about Whisper is that not only did it take down everything nicely, but it also has this feature where you can click option 2 and it actually goes into prompt engineering mode for you. So you can see this actually created a perfect prompt for this Claude instance, so that way it can really get the goals and the details out of the way correctly. Before I do that, another good practice is to ask the system to ask you questions. Ask me questions about this project so that I can be more elaborate and have more detail in making sure that this project is working out well. So now I'm going to transform it. That way the conversations that you're starting are at least starting to get people's attention into starting to build out these systems, and which is exactly what we want to be able to accomplish here. So we're going to let this build, and as it starts asking me questions, I'm going to start, continue where the video leaves off. So here you're going to see that it's starting to update its to-dos, basically go through the plan that it's created for itself and write each piece. You see it's basically created these different folders with different Python displays, different data that still hasn't existed yet. Output doesn't exist here. Here's some actual coding. You don't need to know all these individual pieces, right? Like whenever I'm looking at these projects, I don't even go into the nitty-gritty of these Python systems. I don't know how to read code, but I know how to prompt Claude well enough where if something's going wrong, I can ask it to look into it and fix it. You can see this next question is essentially asking to use a /schedule skill. Now, a skill won't go too deep into it, but a skill is essentially just a recipe for a repeatable task that you want Claude to go and do. In this case, it's launching the instructions of a schedule skill, so that way we can make this project a routine that happens at 4 p.m. every week, every Friday. So we're going to give yes, we're going to say yes for that. And once again, I'm going to switch back to bypass permissions, so that way it just automatically starts using things that it needs in order to make this project work correctly. Still going to give me more questions here, and I will let it, I'll go ahead and answer these questions and stop wherever there may need some context to be added. So you can see here that essentially it's built out the project, it already set up the scheduling, and everything should work. Before going into this next part, I realized I forgot to cover what this next tool is that we're going to use. It's called Fireflies, and it's essentially a meeting transcript tool that helps you create better meeting summaries. We're going to do an MCP connection with Fireflies to be able to actually pull in that transcript context from meetings that you've had throughout the week. So it's a really good tool to use to add more context to your weekly report. Before we actually do a test run, we still need to double check to see how the Fireflies MCP is connected. So there's really 2 different ways that you can set this up, right? There's going to be an MCP, which just means Model Context Protocol, and that's essentially you can imagine a USB-C connection of software to your AI agents, right? It's the easiest way to set up and connect other software to your Claude agents, and it's very simple to set up. Most systems, most software that exists right now has some sort of MCP if it's up to date and proper. And if they don't, they're going to be getting there very soon. MCPs are very simple to make as long as they have APIs. And so I'll give an example right now of how I would want to build out or how to connect MCP. Essentially, you can see here, I'm going to go into Fireflies and go into my account, and you can, if you go into settings, most software is going to have something very similar. You're just going to need to look for it and ask around. You can even ask AI to see if they have MCP, right? Ask your system. You can see here in Fireflies, they have this MCP and DevTools section. All you have to do is connect your meeting with apps, copy that, and I'm going to say, I want to set up this MCP. And you just send that link. And so I already have it set up, but essentially what it's going to say is it's going to ask you to log into your MCP account. So you can see it's already connected and all that stuff. So whenever you want to actually use it, it's going to be very simple. When you put it in, it's going to tell you to log in. And once it logs in, then you're going to be able to see that MCP exists. Now, let's say you don't have MCP access, right? Well, in this sense, we would actually want to download, or we would actually want to look at API, right? And that is the most common availability right now for even older software. API is application programming interface, and that's going to be very important for future context. You won't need to know how to read it yet, though. APIs are something a little bit different, and you're going to need a specific API key in order to actually launch this. But essentially, the way that you're going to want to do this is if you go, I'm going to use Slack as an example for now. Let's say here's the Slack developer docs, right? A lot of websites will have these types of docs if you just search it up. So whatever, let's say you just have a software, you can just say, software API docs, right? And you should be able to find your software's API docs. These are essentially the API docs. You can see Web API, Events API. Really what we're looking for here is being able to pull the transcript API. And so what we're going to do is copy the website here and paste it in here. Analyze these API docs from Slack and let me know if you're able to pull transcripts from potential huddles that are recorded. And so now that's going to read over the documentation, tell you if it's capable of doing it, which it will be because it has that capability in Slack. Slack also has a great MCP, but I'm just using APIs in this example since it's, want to be able to show the different options that we have available here. You can see, couldn't find it directly with the website that I had sent it, so it's likely going into even deeper websites to find the information and what they would need to find in order to actually make that happen. So after I did a little bit of searching here, you can see that Slack, the API can't pull the huddle transcripts necessarily, but it can pull, if you are on the enterprise plan, which most likely you are going to be if this is something you need, that it can read the canvas, and so it can essentially pull huddle notes and summaries. So that means that that's going to work. That should work well enough for what we're trying to accomplish here. And so, this is something that you would essentially link up and you would ask it to link up. So say the next step with APIs would be this. Create a .env file so that I can host my API key for Slack for future references to actually be able to pull the huddle notes and summaries so we can include this into the weekly update. And essentially a .env file is just a safe and secure way for you to upload your API key to AI. You never want to paste your API key directly into your Claude instance because that is a security concern. .env allows you to have that set up there. So essentially you can see here, I don't have the APIs set up yet, so I'm going to show you how I would go about doing this. So for this particular example in Slack, I am currently in the api.slack.com/apps website. This is really where you're going to be able to get your API. You're going to need to log into your Slack, and most software that has similar permission issues will likely have some sort of similar configuration here. So I'm just going to go over for this example just for the sake of this video. So you're going to go ahead and click create an app. You can say create an AI agent, starter agent. We'll say meeting notes help. And we'll go ahead and select your workspace, review the agent, and then it's going to go ahead and install that, ask for a couple questions on my end. I'm going to allow it to do so. And now you can see here that I can create my project. Now, one thing that's important, of course, you can see my information here is going to be blurred out just because, I don't want anyone to be able to see it. You can see the bot token and the app token, and those are going to be the API keys that I'm actually going to include in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy the bot token, not the app token, and you can see it created the .env file. I'm going to go ahead and you can see here it asks for the Slack bot token. I'm going to go ahead and paste it directly in here where it's asking me to post it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and do it offline so that you can't see what I actually post. And so now it lives in here. Let's make sure that it's actually connected. I pasted the bot token into the .env file. Can you go ahead and make sure that the connection to my Slack account is working correctly? And now we let it. And now you can see that it is properly connected and it seems to be working. So that means that now we can continue building out the project. And if you have any sort of meeting summaries, you can essentially ask it for this. and you have any meeting summaries coming in, you can just ask it to and prompt it to find those meeting summaries for you. So now we're going to go ahead and build the first proper end result that we're looking for, which is the Word document for updates and the Excel task management. And it is currently set up now. It will run on its own at 4 p.m. because we had that schedule skill set up. If that doesn't pop up for you, you make sure that you prompt it and ask it to do so. But we're going to go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and move forward with a test session. Go ahead and pull the information from my Fireflies notes and to make sure the MCP is working, and then also pull data from these other files that I'm going to include here shortly. So brought those in. Essentially, the next thing, I had prepared these links that I'm going to pull up these other dummy files just for the sake of this project. I'm going to bring these into the project and then we're going to continue. So you can see I brought in these files here, this Word document. These are all, again, dummy data, nothing super in-depth, just using it to test this file. Recommend you can try to build something similar or just try to use data that you have that you feel comfortable enough with to test out and just see how that works. I also changed the prompts just for the sake of making it work better here. So we're going to go ahead and send this and see what comes out as the first result. And so now we can see that it created these two outputs in the output folder for this month. So if we were to double click and go to Reveal in Finder, we can see the two reports right here. And if we open it, we can see here's the first Excel, and basically just made my tasks, when the due date is, who the owner of each piece is, and priority and status, as well as a Word doc of a weekly status report. I won't go into this too deep because it did actually pull my Fireflies transcripts from this week, and so there were some sensitive conversations that we had in there that I can't scroll through and talk about too much. But you can see here, essentially just created a little product and sales inventory and talked about some other important topics here. So yeah, that was the initial build. Now, keep in mind, this was just the first iteration on this, right? The beauty about being able to work on projects like this is actually being able to chat with it and tell AI what was missing, what did you like, what you didn't like, and when you want to change things, right? That's really what makes these types of projects more and more efficient, right? Because let's say in the first run, you'll maybe get like 40-50% of the way there of something that's valuable and actually quantifiable, but the biggest part is actually being able to fill those next 40 to 50%, the other 40 to 50% by iterating and constantly changing and improving. And maybe there are new ideas, maybe there are things, other connections that you want to make, right? And that's really where AI really starts to come into play and build on top of what we just built here, right? So this is a great starting point for you to build off of the general idea of how to use AI, but where it really gets into more detail and really starts to make a visible difference in your workplace is when you start iterating and adding these other systems. If you want to build something like this that's more specific to your own workflow, check out the Assist, Optimize, and Transform skills from last week's video. That's how you find it and plan out your workflow before you build it in the way that I just did here. I also linked the AI burn rate quiz if you want to see where your team is losing time or money to AI right now and not just in this one workflow. Link in bio and in the first comment pinned. So the next time you sit down to write a status update, don't rebuild your prompt from zero. Just map the process once, build the skill once, run it every week after that. And that is a real system. Pulling live data, running in on its own schedule, built once in Claude Code. You just watched exactly how to build yours. See you in the next one.